to biochemical research, and in particular aging, because aging and certainly in other places is not not such a popular study, or it wasn't earlier. And what led you
Right.
to it?
Especially when I began. Well, I am 69, so I was born in 1951, a few years after the last war. Um, and at the time was the world was really growing after the war, and Argentina was doing well. And just as a child, my parents had secondary school, so they were not really intellectuals or illustrated people. But anyway, they explained me a few things about well, physics and biology, just few things because they didn't have a lot of background. But for reasons that I really cannot identify, at being 13, 14 years old, more or less, I was attracted and impressed, I wondered, by live things, living things in general. So because playing in the street sometimes with my friends, where I could see different kind of small animals, insects, and it occurred to me that the life was a wonderful book because it was so complex and such a mechanism. You don't ask me why or who influenced me on this because I couldn't identify any person. I didn't have any relatives being or biochemist or and this nothing. So I cannot really realize it came from inside me. Um, and so then I began to realize that well I was 13, so the future for me was far 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 away. I was not concerned at all about myself, but my parents were young at the time, but my grandparents, which I loved very much, well, were not so young, and so I thought that I was going to lose them because this is a destiny that nature imposes to every living being. And so I was just taken by a feeling sentiment of rebellion. I rebelled at this universal fate that nature imposed on us. And this continues in my mind. I didn't discuss this really because being a kid, 15 years old person, my friends were not very much interested in this kind of discussion. Fine. So I kept that to myself. And so I began to consider what university career I should pursue. And for some reasons, I knew very little about chemistry, about biology, just secondary knowledge, nothing. But I had the feeling that I should begin my university studies not by studying medicine, which seemed to be the more sensible things to do if you want to fight aging, but chemistry. I had the feeling that the secret of life and of aging could be in the molecules. I knew very, very little at the time, surprisingly little about all that. But for some reason, I felt that I should enroll myself in biochemistry in the city where I was living, south of Buenos Aires. There was not a school of biochemistry where I was born here, Plata City, 30 miles south Buenos Aires. It's a university city. Yes, there was one. I had a lot of, still have a lot of relatives here. So, well, I make that decision. Nobody, my parents gave me complete liberty to choose. That's something that really appreciate. And to all of us, we are three, a sister and a brother. So at the time when I finished secondary school, I came just to La Plata, enrolled in the biochemistry, and I began to study biochemistry. And I remember here at La Plata, the School of Biochemistry was strongly oriented to chemistry, physical chemistry, because it had begun as that, and biology and biochemistry was incorporated later. So I learned a lot of physics, quantum physics, chemistry, deep chemistry, and really I enjoyed even calculus. So we were well trained in mathematics, and that shaped my mind. And I didn't regret to be studying those subjects. We studied biology, of course, also. That in principle seemed too far away from biology, biochemistry, aging, etc. But I thought that this background information would help. And in time showed me that I was correct. Then later I was learning, of course, biochemistry. But in the end, it turned out, I didn't guess that at the time, but that really the inner workings of life are in molecules, in our genes. I didn't know anything about genes in that time, but was there. So in this sense, I was just I aimed at the right direction. And at the bottom of my decision to study, of course, I very much enjoyed studying and learning new things. But was my idea that I was doing that to get the tools to defeat aging, and well, if possible, try to save the life of my beloved ones. Uh, that was my idea. So this is why everything began. When I studied my undergrad career, I did research, but then I decided to enter my PhD degree. And at that time, I began to look in Argentina, different cities of Argentina, laboratories working, doing research on aging, and there was none at all.
Mm.
So even people ask me why. I was, of course, a very inexpert young student. Why did they want to study such an important topic? Because there was diabetes, cancer, other pathologies that were far more important than aging. Why to study aging? Well, I said that I just wanted, I was interested in aging, and that was really very, very odd, probably for the persons the professors that talked to me. Well, but I was really very, very perseverant. Goya is Basque, and it says that Basques were very stubborn. So I had the first chance. So I finally someone offered me the possibility to do my PhD in Argentina on proteins of the chromatin, that is the proteins associated with DNA, in a model of an hormone-dependent mammary cancer. This person told me that I would have to come to the States or to Europe to really do aging research. But that study, that PhD work, would endow me with some tools to begin to understand, because chromatin seemed to be quite interesting. That is DNA plus the protein that wrap DNA. And at the end of my PhD, well, I began to explore in the States, and I got in contact with later Dr. Joseph Maites at Michigan State University. He has been a pioneer in neuroendocrinology of aging, that is the connection between the brain, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland, the master gland
Mm.
of the body. So, and at that time in the mid 60s, I think, and 70s, a great discovery was made, technical discovery, that was a method to measure hormones like pituitary hormones and other peripheral hormones in blood, in serum, because hormones are circulating, are chemical messengers for the endocrine glands, but are circulating in very, very minute amounts. It was impossible for many years to accurately determine their concentrations. The only way possible was bioassays, which were really very had little accuracy. But at that time was the radioimmunoassay, a system using radio-labeled hormones, was developed by Berson and Yalow. which of course were awarded the Nobel Prize for that. And that gave a tool to neuroendocrinologists to begin to measure accurately hormones in in serum, in blood. And of course, at that time, at the 60s and 70s and probably 80s to an extent, the animal model by excellence, by far, in laboratories was not mouse, was the rat. And I spent 3 years as a postdoc in the States, and we always studied rats. And in fact, now that I can tell that because I have the experience, I have worked with the mice too. Rats are much more convenient in many aspects, and really major discoveries of the physiology of animal physiology was made in rats, endocrinology, neuroscience. And so there is a lot known about rats. And then, of course, with time, especially with the discovery of immune function, mice began to become more popular. But I think that the main driving force, especially in the northern hemisphere, to push people, researchers, to use mice, or even just to give up on animals and try to do experiments in culture, is the problem that they have with the animal rights group, which they don't care about uh, really doing science or not. They don't want animals to be used on research. So they are powerful, they're perseverant, and they have taken the cost of keeping animals to be really prohibitive in the States and in Germany, for example, or Europe, in Western Europe. So mice are more convenient than rats because a mouse is 10 times smaller than a rat. So you can keep many mice in the same space. 10 mice where we have only a rat. And I'm speaking of female rats, which are smaller than males. Male, when they grow old, uh, they weight is like 500 grams a pound, I think, or so. So they are enormous. But females are less, the size is smaller, and they are very interesting and very interesting model to study. With my boss, Dr. Mates, in Michigan State, we did a lot of a lot of studies studying hormones. Because at that time, and let me get into the history a little bit of science. Well, it was discovered when the brain immunoassay was available that animals, when they age, rats live 3 years, and especially female rats, when they age, many hormones, pituitary hormones and peripheral hormones, go down. For instance, growth hormone goes down. Thyroid hormone, which is a very important hormone, goes down too, declines with it. Testosterone, of course. In the case of estrogen in female rats, things are a little bit different because reproductively speaking, the rat is not like the human female. But this is a difference. But in general, there was a decline. So they said, okay, here we have the problem. The neuroendocrine system controls everything, puberty, everything. What triggers the puberty is the neuroendocrine system. So with age, hormones decline. Well, we have the solution here now, immediate. Is just let's try hormone replacement therapy. I was convinced by that idea at the time, my boss too. So he had really a lot of resources at the time, was very famous, and a big lab, doing mostly physiology, neuroendocrine physiology. So we started with all the male rats. The animals were 24 months old, which for a rat is old, pretty old, not senescent, senile, but pretty old. So we treated those animals every day intramuscularly with a combination of growth hormone, bovine growth hormone, and thyroxine. thyroid hormone. And it was amazing because I was involved in the experiment that in the first days, the animals recover uh, the quality of the fur. The fur was really quite smooth, was just shining, and the eyes were brighter than before. You could tell, of course, in a subjective way, that these animals looked better. Obviously, probably because of the effects of hormone. So we thought, well, you see, this treatment is the key to rejuvenate the animals. These animals are being clearly rejuvenated. We had to do tests, of course, but they were looking really rejuvenated. But what happened? 1 week, 10 days after that, they began to be refractory to the doses of GH and thyroxine we were given. We increased the doses, still the animals continue to decline in their response, and by say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the animals no longer responded to the treatment, no matter how high the dose we had given. So these animals had become tolerant to the hormone. And I began to realize that things were not as simple as we imagined, because we have two components. You have the hormone, which is important, of course, but you also have the receptor in the target organ. And when you give the animals externally too much hormone, and they may prefer not to receive so much hormone, they uh, uh, down regulate their receptors, so they become less responsive to the same amount of hormone. And in the end, they just do not respond at all. So that failed. That failed. So was initially good. It's like if you begin to take amphetamine. Okay, you will feel the first days, okay, but then you will begin to feel the side effects and will become less and less and less responsive to that. So it's like any other drug or hormone. So hormone replacement was not the solution. Growth hormone treatment, which is used now, I know because I have that experience, is not the thing to increase longevity or something like this, because of course we knew on those time that growth hormone stimulates protein synthesis and so on. But things are not as simple as just giving things an increasing synthesis of protein. Organisms are very complex, and you have to really know what you do, because when you touch something on one point of the biological system, you are altering everything probably different other places, because in biological system like a mammal, very complex, everything is connected with everything. So you cannot touch something here without consequences in many other parts of the animal. So this is what I call an integrative view, a physiological view of the animals. And this is something that I don't see so much now. Researchers, for example, they regard, uh, and some researchers will come to your mind immediately, the blood system, the vascular network, as a control organ. They think that the blood is the control organ, is young blood is the source of rejuvenative factors. Maybe old blood is just the opposite. But the blood has no control. Blood and the vascular system did not evolve to control. What is the organ that evolved to control everything? The brain. So we have to seek the origin of the orders and the changes really in the brain, and perhaps some of its associated organs like the endocrine hormones. And of course, we have also the immune system, which is also a network, and it is in a close connection, bidirectional connection with the neuroendocrine system. Everything is connected with everything. But the immune system and the neuroendocrine system, meaning the brain and the endocrine gland, are a network, what is called a homeostatic network, that take care of controlling that everything is okay in the organism. For example, the immune system is in charge of the biological homeostasis. It recognizes when a cell is not self, and so kills the cell. And the neuroendocrine system controls the more physicochemical environment of the body, that is glucose levels, insulin levels, maybe ions like potassium, sodium, and so on. And also controls through the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic heart rate, the rate of breathing, and so many other things. So these are the organs that control everything. So control puberty, of course. At the time of puberty is ordered by the brain, not by the blood. What the blood does is just to convey hormones that are released by this organ. So this is why when people say, well, blood may contain, of course, hormones, but it's not really giving the orders to age or not to age.
I hope that you found the video informative. Please do hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell button and choose all for any new video release notifications. It encourages us to continue to create more videos about anti-aging and extending healthy lifespan. Thank you so much for your kind support. I wish you all well and will speak to you again soon.